Welcome members to overview and scrutiny. Thank you for attending this evening. Please, can we go to agenda item 1, please, to approve the minutes of the overview and scrutiny of the 23rd of July. All those present? Thank you. Agenda item number 2, apologies. Any apologies? I will now go to Ms. Lorraine Foulkes.
Thank you, Chairman. We've got apologies from councillors S. Dufty, B. Bond, P. Harrison, G. Spruce, K. Williams, W. Sutton and S. Zalapsky.
Thank you.
Apologies from Councillor Susan Duncan.
Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. And sorry, members, just to confirm, by attending this meeting, you are agreeing to this meeting being recorded this evening. Thank you. Number 4, UK Shared Prosperity and Rural England Prosperity Fund. I will now pass to Councillor Mark Evans, please.
Good evening, members. There are 2 papers before you this evening from Planning and Enterprise Services. The first one is a UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural England Prosperity Fund update, which will be presented by Mr. Grant Mitchell. You'll note that the recommendation is for you to note the contents of the report, but of course this is the scrutiny committee, and we invite you to scrutinise the paper. We invite you to ask questions, and we invite you to make observations and recommendations, and Mr. Mitchell will deal with those. I'll pass it over to Grant.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I think for those of you that can recall, we've got a governance structure in place for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and part of that governance is that periodically we will update the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So here I am with the latest update on that, and I suppose overall there's a really positive picture to paint here and a lot of really good stuff happening up and down the district, of which I'll endeavour to pick out a few. If I don't get to a certain part of it and you'd want to ask any further questions, again, as Councillor Evans has said, I'm happy to pick up any questions on that. So hopefully you all know what the UK Shared Prosperity Fund is and the Rural England Prosperity Fund. So I'll start heading towards 3.8 of the report and give you an update on different strands of it. So there are 3 different priority areas for it. There's people and skills, supporting local businesses, and there's a whole section there, priorities on communities in place. So starting with the people and skills, I suppose what I'll probably say at the beginning is my role is an overall project lead on this one from the officer perspective. There are a number of different teams within the council. Most teams within the council are have different projects within this. So if you do have a question, I can't answer it specifically because it's not necessarily my service area. I will take away that question and come back to you. So the first one of those is the people and skills side, which is led by our welfare services team. And for the purposes of this funding, we've got the Creating Brighter Futures programme, and the programme is really about providing assistance for those people that are residents that are long-term unemployed, as well as opportunities for those that wish to reskill or upskill. There's a link there within the report if you want to find out a bit more about it. What we do have and what the expectation from government is with the funding, that we've got to report back to them regularly on interventions, outputs and outcomes achieved from the funding. And in Appendix A, the Creating Brighter Futures team have set out the progress against each of the interventions, outputs and outcomes from their particular area. I think what hopefully you can see that with 6 months of the programme still to go, overall performance is really strong across the 36 indicators they're working on. 26 of those have already been exceeded, some of those very well exceeded across the full 2-year targets. Of those 10 interventions that haven't yet been achieved, 6 are 50% or over, and we're fairly confident that they'll be achieved. There's 4 that are under target, but there's a lot of work going on at the moment to try and get that number up, and to make sure that we reach that target. So any of those that are under, there are action plans in place to make those happen and try and get those numbers up. So there's the Appendix A sets out the range of different work that's gone on there. So I don't intend to necessarily go through that, but I'm happy to pick up any questions on it. The supporting local business side of it, when we set out our investment plan 2.5 years ago, there was a strong focus on there on supporting our local businesses, and there's about 1.9 million allocated across the 3 years of the programme towards supporting our local business communities. And in 3.13 of the report, we set out there the range of different projects that we've got going on with our local businesses. And hopefully what you'll see there is we haven't just targeted one part of our business community. There's an effort there to engage with, I suppose you call it a life cycle of a business, from starting up right through to mature businesses, and the support there for all of them. So our startup programme, at the moment, we've had 80 businesses that are either gone through the programme or are currently on that programme, and there's an associated grants programme. We've had some people apply for that. Our Get Started and Grow is something that we're working on with the County Council, and gives specialist consultancy support to fairly newish businesses around. I suppose particularly if you're a small business, you're not necessarily going to have a lot of that sort of legal, digital or HR support that you might need as a small business. And that programme has already been fully utilised. Strive for Success is for those that are beyond the startup period. We've got 77 businesses that have completed that programme, a lot of grant applications, and there are still people going through that programme as well. The Innovate programme, which we're working on in conjunction with Staffordshire University, is looking at enabling businesses to develop new products, bring them to market, or to actually look at more innovative and efficient ways of operating as a business. Again, 37 businesses are currently in the pipeline. There are associated grants for this one as well. That's working through quite nicely. Our Green Solutions programme is pretty much does what it says on the tin. It gives businesses the opportunity to get specialist advice on their energy consumption and reducing their carbon usage. And there's, again, grants associated with that. So, again, this is a county-wide programme that lots of the districts and boroughs have bought into with their UK SPF money. And we've got 49 energy reviews from local businesses and a number of grant applications going through. And one of the more recent ones is High Street Shopfront Grant Programme, which, again, pretty much does what it says on the tin. It gives grants for businesses that want to improve the attractiveness of their shop fronts or bring empty properties back into use. And despite that not being running for too long, we've had quite a lot of interest on that one. And that ties quite nice. I'll have a drink. There, no gin. Ties quite neatly into section 3.14 of the report, where there has been a lot of focus around our village centres and high streets. So I think there's been a few reports that have crossed your doorsteps fairly recently on the village centre work. But I suppose just to highlight a couple of areas, one of the things that we were looking to do was do a specific campaign for encouraging people into our villages, increasing footfall, increasing visitor numbers and spend within our village centres. And we're working on a campaign on that one at the moment, and that will include some video work as well, just highlighting what great places our village centres are to visit. We're looking on a food and drink guide, and that will pick up all sorts of different hospitality and food and drink businesses across the district. There is a Enjoy Staffordshire website. What we're looking to do is to develop our own microsite from that main website, so that there will be a specific area for South Staffordshire visiting locally. There's a bespoke business support programme for high street businesses, which has just been launched. And we've got the grants available for parish councils, community groups, or businesses to improve the look and feel of their village centres. That bidding is currently open. It closes next Monday. So if you do know of any of your local areas that still may want to get a bid in, then all the details are on our website. Please direct them. But I think at the moment we have had quite a lot of interest and fielded quite a few queries and calls from particularly parish councils. I suppose one of the early wins for us was that we looked at doing some work on one of our own industrial estates at Landywood around how we could reduce carbon usage on that one. So we installed extra efficient LED lighting, better insulated roller shutter doors and some solar PV panels on some of the units roof. I believe some of the feedback from that has already been quite positive, that particularly those better insulating shutter doors are already making a difference to the businesses that are operating there. The community and place element of it, bulk of that funding was always set aside for year 3 of the programme. And if I pointed out earlier, the programme's tapered up, so we got quite a small allocation in the first year, with it tapering up quite significantly in year 3. So most of the community and place interventions are scheduled for this year. Just to point out some of those, there are a number of existing open spaces across the district that have been improved as part of that programme. We're looking at some active travel and green space enhancements on the South Staffordshire Railway Walk and the Worley and Essington Canal. We've done the feasibility work on that. Members have recently allocated funding towards that, and Ryan further on the table is leading on getting that work started and hopefully finished as quickly as possible. I've already mentioned the capital improvements to the village centres, as well as those number of tourism and visitor economy activities. Members will also hopefully recall that there was 1.2 million of the UK SPF was residual funding that was unallocated and available for organisations to bid into. So in 3.18, there is a table of successful bids and roughly what they're looking to do with that money. So we are starting after a slow start with some of these. We've seen grant applications coming through. A number of them are finished, or a number of them are in progress. I wasn't necessarily planning to go through those, but I'm happy to pick up any specifics on them. At the moment, there is just over £285,000 unallocated. I suppose the key for us is to make sure that we don't have to return any of that money. If we don't spend it, it has to go back to government. So we're looking at any projects that we can potentially pull forward at the moment, that either some projects that are existing and may need a bit more to add extra value to them, or it's still open for people to bid into. Moving on to the Rural England Prosperity Fund, it is related to UK SPF, but I suppose this was specific to districts and boroughs that have got a predominant rural community element to them. So we got £489,000. It's a grants programme for external business and community applicants. It's for capital funds. We launched the fund last summer, quite a lot of strong interest from businesses and community organisations. And 3.20, I've set out the successful applicants to date and where they are with their different projects. A lot of them, particularly the building type ones, are currently in progress, but will be completed by the end of the programme. And some of them have already completed. All bids that have come to the evaluation panel have been approved to date. So we've allocated about 209,000. There's about £181,000 worth of projects in the pipeline, just needing a bit more information and waiting to be assessed. So, but there is still just under £100,000 that are unallocated. So if you're aware of anybody that may be interested in that applying, please ask them to get in touch. There's also a link there to the web page as well. Just to highlight and reiterate the fact that we have to get this money spent and all projects completed by the end of March. At the moment, we do not know what is happening to UK SPF post March 25. We're hoping there might be a little bit of clarity in the upcoming budget. But if there are any unspent funds at the end of March, it has to go back to government. So we're really keen to try and maximise that, ensure that all of that money is spent in South Staffordshire. And there's a lot of work going on at the moment to try and make sure that we've got projects and getting projects through and getting those up and running and that money spent so that we can make that difference. And I suppose finally, I was just going to add that we have to report back to government, to MHCLG a couple of times a year. We are currently in one of those periods where we've just come to the end of the half year, so we are working on our return back, our returns to date. And what we do is use that as an opportunity to reprofile projects, because as you'd expect, spend changes, priorities change, different projects come and go. So to date, I hope you'll be pleased to hear we've had no major concerns from MHCLG on the projects or our spend or performance today, which again I think is really good news. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the officer? Councillor?
Thank you, Chairman. Just on 3.18, the table for the residual funds. South Staffordshire Council, improvements to 8 South Staffordshire Council open spaces across the district, 125k. Works underway, but no claims to date. Is that 125 all allocated? And would you consider opening that up to parish councils and county councils as well, including increasing that fund pot with some of that 287,000? Because from our point of view, the limitation of district-owned land obviously makes it more restrictive to where that money can be spent. So that's the main one on that. I think you did cover it. 3.21. I think that's a typing error, isn't it? March 2024 should be March 2025.
Yeah, that should be 2025. Thank you.
Okay, so I think both of those are probably good news. I can answer both of those in a positive way. So yes, the 125 is completely allocated for council open spaces, but that residual amount that is unspent and unallocated is available for people to bid into. So if you've got a project in Essington, for example, that you can get on board and get done pretty quickly, speak to us and please get a bid in. Likewise, if you know of anybody else, any community groups that might be interested in doing something, it's there. So yeah, I suppose the message is go for it. I think the worst thing that could happen is we have to give that money back. So yeah, come and have a chat with us.
Councillor?
Thank you. I spoke before on this issue and I'm going to repeat myself. There is no safe footpath between Purton and Codsall. We have requested assistance in the past from Codsall Parish Council with this, and I feel it's in place now to actually try and move this forwards. I wonder if it would be possible to spend some of that money on a feasibility study in order that we could plan a route for this footpath. Clearly, it would have to involve the county council because this would be involving some movement on their part as well. But I feel very strongly for my community and for Codsall's community that we cannot safely walk or cycle between the two communities, and that with the increased housing and increased traffic on this route, there will be extreme pressure. And noting that farmers now have extraordinarily wide vehicles, which are also causing extra danger for our residents on both sides of this. That I feel a feasibility study for this would really move this forwards. I'm conscious it would cost money because we're looking at possible purchase of private land in order to create the corridor. But I do feel we need to make some movement towards this. I would hate us to be ignoring this still and us to have fatalities along this route. And members would already be aware, as I've spoken about this before, that we cannot safely cycle or walk our children to Codsall High, which is our high school. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Grant, can you come back?
Yeah, certainly can. So I suppose to access this money, the study would have to be commissioned by, well, I suppose probably as a highways project, the county council needs to be heavily involved in this one. And I suppose it's about commissioning it and making sure it's done in time would probably be the key for that one. But I think I think that you probably need to pose the question to the county council first before coming back to us, because I'd hate to say, yeah, we put the money to it and then the county will, clearly you need their cooperation given it is highways land that we'd be dealing with. I think on the face of it, it possibly could qualify, but again, there's the caveats about speed and pace. It's got to be done quite quickly and commissioned and completed. But I think it's probably, you might need to have a chat with the county, and whether you do that as Purton and Codsall or just Purton, I'll leave that one with you. But yeah, I think you need to get county engaged, and if you are, then get something into us.
Come back on that.
Please, just a supplementary. At what point, at what date does the final report have to be made on this money?
I think from our point of view, I suppose the ultimate end date is March. So the project's got to be completed and all the spend has gone out of our accounts by that point. Ideally, what we don't want to be in a position is where we've still got projects that are half done in the middle of March. So ideally, in accountancy terms, we need to make sure that we've make this as easy on ourselves as possible. At the moment, there'll probably come a point towards the end of the calendar year where we have to pull up a drawbridge and say we cannot fund any more projects because they're just not going to complete in time. Nothing will be worse than we give you the money, you can't complete it, and then you potentially got the liability as the parish council for completing the study and paying for it. So there will come a point where we either run out of money, in which case we'll publicise that grant programme is closed, or at some point we'll have to say we can't accept any new bids because they're just never going to complete in time. So I think the only message I can give is if you have got projects that you're looking at, is speed is of the absolute essence now, to make sure that you can get something into us, it can be evaluated, you as members can approve the allocation of the funding for it.
Thank you. One more question. We are planning, as you know, I've planned the route for the park road. We have some small landscaping work to complete to finish that, which the parish council are already nodding at funding. We haven't got any help with that, but we will need some assistance with actually putting this together. And it can be done fairly swiftly now that the route is planned. So I think from my point of view, I hope that the council would look favourably upon this as a project for the first part run in South Staffordshire.
Yeah, so again, just to emphasise, if that can come into us as quickly as possible, the process for approving bids is there is an evaluation panel that is made up probably half and half of independent folk that are not part of the council, plus a few council officers. So long as it hits the interventions that are required by government, and by the sounds of that, that's probably something that would qualify. If the evaluation panel are happy to recommend onto both the corporate leadership team and then the cabinet, that be approved, and you can get everything. Again, it's the key of speed. So if you do need to do any work, that you've got quotes, that you know how much it's going to cost you, then yeah, that's the process. So it's normally, if we could probably get a decision, if that came in tomorrow, you'd probably within 4 weeks get a decision. So that way it's been through the panel, it's been to corporate leadership team, and then obviously you've got the publication dates with cabinet and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we can, with a fair wind, we can get it done in about 3 to 4 weeks.
Thank you, councillor. Any more questions? No. Thank I will now go to the recommendation. That's, oh, sorry, do the councillors wish to debate this topic? No. Thank you. I will now go to the recommendation. It is recommended that the members note the contents of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund for Rural England Prosperity Fund report significant progress made. Is everybody in favour of that? Thank you. Agenda item 5, economic growth corridor update. I will now pass to Councillor Mark Evans again, please. Agenda item 13 to 16.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, members, this is an update on the economic growth corridor, which will be presented by Grant. I hope you share my enthusiasm for this project. There is a comment in there that says it's a once-in-a-generation opportunity, but I'll pass you over to Grant to present the paper. Grant.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I suppose you'll all be aware of the I-54 project and the huge difference that's made to the local economy. It's both public and private investment of over 1.5 billion has gone into attracting some fairly major global brands onto there. And that's created lots of jobs for our local communities. Has been a huge boost to the local economy, both in South Staffordshire and in the Black Country and beyond. I think one of the things that we've been having conversations with both Wolverhampton and county is the county council is we're at a point where there's not a lot of land left on I-54. So it's what next for us? Are there any other opportunities in that Wolverhampton, South Staffordshire area where we can continue that really good news story around economic growth? And I suppose what started the conversation for us was that Wolverhampton last year was successful in getting levelling up funding from the government to look at a green innovation corridor that starts in the city centre, goes out to Wolverhampton Science Park, where they were looking to attract a lot of sort of green technology, green businesses, and have a real focus around green growth. And we've always worked very closely with Wolverhampton on economic growth, given effectively what's good for Wolverhampton is predominantly quite good for South Staffordshire and vice versa. And I-54 is a byproduct of that. So part of the conversation was, I suppose for many years, Wolverhampton have always looked at the A449 corridor out of the city centre as probably a focus for growth for them, and all of our key strategic existing employment sites are a continuation of that, largely on that sort of A449 M54 corridor. So is there an opportunity to look at the existing growth that we have planned in that area and what Wolverhampton would like to achieve within that same corridor, as a way of almost extending out that existing corridor, green corridor within Wolverhampton out into South Staffordshire? I think one of the things that we've been quite keen to look at is, it sounds all right when we just talk about it, but actually then is there a concept there? Is there something there that perhaps needs a little bit of work around feasibility, deliverability, and then I guess if there is, around marketability. So what we did do was, there's an annual conference every year in Leeds that brings together all the key real estate and investment type folk across the country. We've been going for the last couple of years promoting Staffordshire. All of the Staffordshire districts and boroughs go with the county council to promote Staffordshire as a place. We go there with a specific focus for South Staffordshire. Was at that event this year, and the three chief executives from the local authorities had a chat with some of the key existing developers and investors in the area, just to see whether there was a hunger for doing some more work around this. Clearly there was. So one of the things that we agreed to do as the three local authorities was to go away and look at commissioning a research and feasibility study, and in 3.5 of the report we set out what we're looking to try and achieve with that, and 3.6 picks out some of the things that we'd like to see included within that report. I suppose what I would stress at this point is, from our point of view, we've got some really good opportunities, existing opportunities down there. This is not about any new sites, it's not about any new land, but what we have got is the remainder of I-54, the former Royal Ordnance Factory site in Featherstone. We've got Four Ashes, we've got West Midlands Interchange. So those are existing sites that I've already got, have proved to be very deliverable because they've already got their planning. We've allocated those sites. I suppose potentially the only area that was maybe new on that corridor was in the Regulation 19 iteration of the local plan, there was a proposed new employment site at Junction 13 in the M6, which sits within that corridor. So we've gone out to tender with the three local authorities to commission that feasibility and marketing study. We've now evaluated all of the tenders that came in. I can't reveal who the successful consultants are yet because there's still the conversations to actually appoint them. So hopefully within the next week we'll know, everybody will know who they are. They'll be appointed to start work as soon as possible with a view to completing this piece of work for February. I think ideally what we'd like is if when we go to that conference again next May, that we've actually got something to launch out to the world as a place where you can come and invest, and it's got a hub, it's a green growth hub. I think what we're already finding with some of the businesses that are wanting to locate I-54 have clearly already changed the whole raison d'etre for their engine manufacturing and are starting now to produce all of their green engines from the site. And some of the other potential inward investors and sites and the WMI we're already finding are very keen on green growth in their area as well. So we think what we're trying to do is get a hook so that South Staffordshire and Wolverhampton become almost recognised nationally and internationally as an area of clean green growth. So that work is underway, and hopefully we can launch that next year to the wider world, and start to get some of those inward investors in that will make us that hub for green growth, but also obviously the economic benefits it brings to the area as well. Happy to take any questions on that.
Are there any questions for Grant? Councillor Allen?
Just want to ask about the 449 really, because we're placing immense pressure on that particular road, and I'm conscious that although heartily applaud having the green corridor, to have such a narrow concentration in a particular area as this, and increasing the traffic in the way that it does for the local residents and those people who are living nearby and affected by it. I wonder if we'd be just as wise, I don't know the answer to this question, looking at another route that we could use, another major road network that we could use in a different way in South Staffordshire for the future, as well as looking at the 449. I feel quite sorry for my Penkridge colleagues who are facing massive housing as well as an improvement in their economic growth. So is there any thought on Highways England part, or any other thought about other parts of South Staffordshire where we could develop another green corridor?
Okay, the first part of that question is very helpful for me, Councillor Allen, because it actually reminds me that I forgot to mention a certain part of what the feasibility study will be. And part of it is not just about growth. One of the things we are quite keen to pick up on is that connectivity along that particular route. And Wolverhampton are quite keen, likewise ourselves. And I think that's one of the things that attracted us to the conversation in the first place, was what opportunities are there for more better public transport down there, greener public transport and greener transport options down there. So it's not just all about cars and HGVs. So that is part of the study, and that's one of the questions that we'll be asking. I suppose from our point of view, all of our key strategic employment sites are already down that corridor for the sort of that level of growth. That's probably a future local plan that you may or may not want to look at, but I suppose from our point of view, there is an existing employment land need, which we are meeting down that corridor. If you want any more, then clearly we'd be exceeding that need, and where we would find that at the moment, I suppose if you're looking at it from an end occupier, they're keen to locate close to key major highways links, so the M6, the M54, they've got all of that in that particular area. So I suppose what we've tried to do is focus, enhance what we've already got, add further value to the existing employment opportunities that we've got down there. It will be for future local plans to decide if there's any further growth that needs to go into South Staffordshire and where that goes. So I can't answer properly the second part of your question without potentially opening a Pandora's box of future. I can see Councillor Cope nodding there, of where future employment growth is going to go in South Staffordshire.
Councillor Hopkins?
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to agree with Councillor Allen that it's already very busy down the A449. When you've got traffic going into Wolverhampton, rush hour, for the Wolves match, whatever, it's already gridlocked at certain points in time. And a lot of the roads going off it are, as we know, and has been raised on numerous occasions, in a very, very poor state. So is part of this proposal that there are infrastructure improvements on the roads that lead onto it? How are you going to manage the traffic on it? It all just seems a bit of a wing and a prayer on that. I'm not quite sure how that will work to put more pressure on those roads that were already very busy. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I think part of that I answered with the first part, but I suppose what we're looking at here, there are no new employment sites proposed. So all of, whether you agree with it or not, all of the modelling work has been done on those employment sites around road capacity and their ability to handle that. I suppose what we're trying to look at with this is, are there opportunities to alleviate that through more green and sustainable travel options? So I suppose I can only part answer the question that all of that transport modelling has been done with the respective sites. What we are looking to do is to improve options for people to get onto those sites without necessarily needing to use the car.
Thank you. Councillor? Yeah. Warren?
Thanks,
Sorry.
thanks, Chair.
Councillor Fisher, sorry.
Grant, you ain't got to really answer this now. It's just more for my own curiosity. Is there a definition of what is green innovation or what is classed as green development in this? Because I just, for my own, want to make sure it's not future use for shed storage, etc. If someone could provide some sort of definition to what classes as a green innovation business, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm partly going to kick that can down the road because that's part of what the study will hopefully pull out. I suppose from our point of view, I think what we're hoping is we've already got some advanced manufacturing businesses in that area that we hope will be able to encourage further advanced manufacturing, but with that greener angle to it. WMI is going to be logistics, but I suppose the hope is that we can try and encourage I suppose those more green travel options, but actually occupiers that have come on there that are focused more on around green technology as well. So I can't answer it fully because I think that's partly what we're hoping the study will pull out for us. I suppose when we've discussed it, those are the sort of areas that we think we're hoping that it will become a focus for green advanced manufacturing, and then hopefully any other sort of green related businesses, whatever they may look like and whatever the study comes out with at the end.
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation, really. The I-54 extension has been very successful, and having visited the site with David Sabine and his team, I'm really pleased with what they've done. But when it was first posited, the idea was that it would be for small high-tech startups. But as I understand, they couldn't get any. So it's actually 2 or 3 large companies that have taken the entirety of the site. Just an observation. Thank you.
I think the early stages of looking at the Western Extension was there were a number of different options to suit which, but whatever happened at the end. So if we've got one occupier that came along and wanted to build one huge unit, that was that option. There was the option of 2 or 3 medium sized, or I guess there was also the option of the smaller. So I think it was depending on who or what came along. And as you know, there's now one largest, medium to largest business already operating on there with the same sort of opportunity that is available. So I suppose potentially what is left could be 2 units, it could be 3, it could be 1. So it's always been a horses for courses type of a whatever comes along. It has to be advanced manufacturing. Has always been, that's been the golden thread right from the start, is that we just wanted advanced manufacturing, not sheds on that particular site.
Councillor Brindle.
Thank you, Chairman. Grant, I don't know if it's you can answer this question, but I have issues with the NHS, with recently taking 7.5 years to develop an hospital in Sandwell in West Bromwich. I've had long terms in hospital, 11 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days at one stage, and I'm having to go again in the near future. But we haven't got an hospital in South Staffs. So an hospital theory point must start somewhere. I don't know where the theory point will start, or somebody to advise me that in 10, 15 years time, we're going to have that many houses, we need an hospital. But where and when do people say, oh, we now need a hospital in South Staffs, not just South Staffs, but to cover the amount of people that we've got in the area. We've got the infrastructure, trains, highways, motorways, stuff like that. But it's the location. When, where can you see or foresee someone might come and say, it's time we had one? If you can't, I appreciate it's a difficult question.
I can't, it's a really good question. I can't answer it directly, I suppose. Partly it's when we're putting together the local plan, what we do is engage with those key strategic stakeholders. So the NHS being one of those, so they know what we're planning, and they're able to tell us whether we've got capacity within existing health facilities, both primary and or otherwise. So those conversations happen, but beyond that, I don't know when you suddenly hit a critical mass that warrants the need for an extra hospital. I don't know, Annette, whether you you can answer that one.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think ultimately that's the issue. And there is almost like a sweet spot, isn't there, in terms of the amount of development that would require. I think safe to say that obviously conversations that we'll be having over the coming months. Obviously, there will be potentially more growth with the government's new target. We will make sure that we engage at the earliest date with the providers of all sorts of infrastructure, education, and obviously primary health as well. So I think to say at this stage that if we think that if there is a need, that we will be addressing those issues. I don't think on the scale of the developments that we're looking at, certainly within the current plan, that would be part of that, but recognise that's an issue for us as a district. Would people look to Russell's Hall, or people look to Wolverhampton, or further afield, Telford and Shropshire. But yeah, I think that's suffice to say, we would be looking to that local plan process, engagement with stakeholders early, to have those conversations. But I don't think we're there yet.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, thank you, members. I will now ask if members wish to debate this topic. Any members? No, thank you. The recommendation for this is to note the contents of the report. Is everybody happy with that recommendation? Thank you, members. I will now go to agenda item 5, which is the climate change action, and I will pass to Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Obviously, everybody knows that in 2020 we declared a climate emergency and have developed both a climate change strategy and an action plan, which we are doing in partnership with other people as well. The action plan was approved by members in 2021 and has been developed and updated with the Climate Change Officers Group, which meets regularly. During the winter of 2023, officers have worked with members in the working group to refresh the climate change strategy and action plan to ensure it's fit for purpose. And today we're going to bring you an update on where we are and what we're doing. So I'll hand over to Annette, who will take you through it, and Brian will show you a short presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Ryan is just trying to load the presentation. Obviously, what you've got in front of you is the report, but the detail, I think, there's quite a few photographs and details of how we've delivered some of that. I think what we really wanted to set out was, as Councillor Williams has set out, 2020, the climate emergency, the council plan that's been incorporated within climate change has been incorporated within that, and the various strands of the council plan. Within that, we have a number of strands on there as well, relating to mitigation, offsetting and reducing carbon emissions. Many of those have been delivered through the plan. There we go, and that's up. That's the trying to wait for the slide to come up so that we can see. So what we're going to do. What we're going to do is talk about the achievements 2023 to 2024. Some of those that you'll all recognise, I'm sure, and many of you will have been involved in those conversations, some of which we've already talked about this evening in terms of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and how we've been able to bring some of those forward. And I won't steal Ryan's thunder because he can talk to those. Then we're going to talk about our own carbon footprint and what that means and what we've done since we started recording that and how we ought to take that forward and how we also want to elevate that and accelerate it in terms of doing a full carbon audit to report that and demonstrate community leadership as part of that and have those conversations with parish councils and community groups and businesses as well. And then we'll end in terms of showing you and explaining about the climate showcase that we'll be having in the next couple of weeks. Slide. So yeah, this is the council plan, obviously. So you can see what we wanted to do. Just to recap that the climate change element is really the golden thread through the strands of financial stability, economic growth, sustainable environment, and empowering communities. The climate strategy touches each one of those, and we're looking at the priorities within there. So as I said, we're about reducing, we're about offsetting, we're about mitigating carbon, and those within those plans we will have elements of how we'll be addressing all those, the detail which Ryan will sort out. The climate action plan is a more detailed element of this, and it talks about 6 key themes. One of those is outreach and awareness, and that's one thing that I'm sure some members will recall. A couple of years ago, we had a climate festival, and we invested in some small-scale community projects. Many of those are still running today, and Ryan will talk about a couple of those as we talk you through the slides. Assets and estates is an absolutely huge element of our climate strategy. What we can do ourselves in terms of reducing our own carbon usage is phenomenal. Not only for reducing the impact on the climate, but also in terms of cost savings as well. Active travel. In a district like ours, obviously, active travel isn't quite as straightforward as if you're a city centre or if you're a town centre or a number of town centres. What we've got, obviously, is a network of villages, and about recognising that those and how we deal with that. And I know there's been conversations about transport, and we'll have further conversations about transport and sustainable transport later on in this chamber, later on in the month in the workshop that we've got planned. Operations. What we do in terms of how we deliver our services is critical, and again we'll show how we've been able to pull some of those and address some of those issues and change the way that we do things to reduce our carbon. Procurement. Everything that we do in terms of all the contracts that we let, we are really keen that we have a climate change element as part of that, and we're working with Andy and the team to work through that. And then last but by no means least, the planning strategy. It's about making sure that what we do in terms of planning for the future, not only is that ensuring that our buildings that we build are climate friendly, but also the strategic location of our growth is climate friendly as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Ryan to go through some of the detail. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Annette, and good evening, members. Well, over the next few slides, I'm going to draw out some of what I think are the council achievements in terms of climate change relating to the action plan and the 6 strands you can see at the bottom of the plan there. And I'll also drag out some of the personal highlights, some of the projects I've particularly enjoyed working on over the last year or so. So, beginning with outreach and awareness. We've continued to deliver carbon awareness training to members, council staff, parish councils. I delivered that to Bilbrook Parish Council earlier on in the year, and later on this week I'll be taking that out to the staff and management at our leisure centres. And more and more it informs sort of decision making around sort of carbon issues, but also in terms of sort of bids that sort of our leisure centres might be considering. It helps to sort of add value to what our staff are considering on those. We've done an awful lot of outreach and awareness events through the localities agenda. There's a couple of events at the bottom there. That's myself at Purton Science Fair, engaging with Wild About Purton, held at Purton Library, and in part the environment zone that we set up for the day there, talking to people about environmental issues and climate change. And in the bottom right, that's the carbon bubble that we welcomed to South Staffordshire early on in the year at the Ches Fest in Cheslin Hay. Fantastically successful day, sort of promoting healthy lifestyles, and the climate change agenda really sort of linked into that. I'm estimating, in terms of residents engaged and that we spoke to on the day, but, it's easily sort of 300 people we've sort of spoke to and sort of talked about these issues on those days. We are continuing our partnership with Community Home Solutions, who offer energy saving advice for households. In the last year, we've supported over 220 households with energy saving measures. We've got more visits planned over the next couple of months to sort of talk to those residents about that. So moving along, as Annette mentioned earlier on, and Grant, indeed, at the top of the show, we're doing an awful lot of work to understand our assets in the States and specifically what we can do to decarbonise these. We've seen installation of EV charging points at a lot of our key council-owned sites, including Bagridge Country Park and some of our estates. And we're moving on to a programme now of what we can do around our council-owned car parks. We're looking for installing more EV points over autumn and winter there. My colleague Imre has an action plan in place which reviews all the commercial estates energy performance certificates, and part of that action plan will set out how we can improve all sites to at least a C rating. As I say, Grant mentioned about the improvements that we've seen at Landywood Industrial Estate. The investment we've seen down there, we estimate each year will save the council 44 tonnes of carbon, but also over £88,000 worth of energy cost savings. It's really getting to that point where the carbon savings are starting to stack up with the financial savings with some of these projects that we're bringing forward. It makes prudent sense to be sort of pushing ahead with them. And Imre has also been working on a review of council-owned land with the potential to sort of locate micro battery storage units next to existing substations. I believe there's a paper going through at the moment. We've got 3 sites proposed as part of that where we might be sort of saving energy and batteries on site with a potential of over 450 tonnes of carbon saving per annum for the council. As we've mentioned, we are looking at what we can do around improving routes for active travel across the district, and a big part of my work in the last few months has been around what we can do to develop the railway walk and Worley Essington Canal to maximise those opportunities for green active travel. We've been working with our partner with a consultancy, Sustrans, who are the national leading charity on sort of cycle routes and getting people outdoors into these active travel routes. We have bids within the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and more bids have gone into the residual fund, and we estimate that we'll be investing over £250,000 across the 2 sites here. I'm having conversations with the county council at the moment for practical works on site, and we're hoping to get out as soon as we can, really. I draw members really to some of the photos on the right hand side. Particularly, you might not make them out too well from there, but at the top you've got the railway walk down in Womben, and you can see the sort of poor state of the path network down there at present. And we really hope we can make a bit of a quick difference to residents and sort of visitors to the district by improving those areas. And similarly, for the Worley Essington Canal on the bottom, we'll be looking to upgrade the path there to sort of active travel standards, a 3 metre wide sealed surface. And it's a real sort of it's an opportunity for us to invest in these sites and demonstrate a sort of a commitment to sort of long-term development of these valuable green corridors. So in terms of operations, it wouldn't be a climate change presentation without mentioning tree planting. And we continue in our work with the Forest of Mercia to facilitate tree planting across the district. We estimate we comfortably saw another 1,000 planted during the last winter. In the top right hand corner there's at least one of them, the tree that we planted last week to commemorate our 50th anniversary as a council. Alongside that, I'll be reaching out to community groups to distribute a further 200 trees in the coming months. to mark this occasion. We are reviewing options, as you'd expect, to minimise the carbon impact of our new waste and recycling contracts. We're trying to understand the art of the possible here, really, and with an eye on the future and legislation and changes that might happen, what we might be able to do. In terms of our own fleet, we're looking at opportunities where we might be able to use hydrogenated vegetable oil. I have to be careful pronouncing that one, as an alternative to diesel fuel for our fleet operations. We are looking into the practicalities of that in terms of our vehicle leases and storage, and whether it's the right thing for us. But I really want to reassure members that we will continue to deliver these services as we have done over the years. We'll continue to deliver them into the future, but just with an eye on how we might do them differently, with the eye on the climate change agenda and carbon savings. As you'd expect, in terms of sort of our environmental aspirations, we are continuing to support our friends groups across the district. It's a figure I'm proud to sort of put out there, really. We estimate that each one of our friends groups contributes over £20,000 in terms of volunteer hours to the district each year. We work with 6 groups directly, but we also know there's several other groups across the district. When you add that up, that's quite a sort of a gift back to the district we receive from our residents there. There's a couple of photos there in the bottom right hand corner of the Bill Book Repair Cafe, which links directly into the climate change agenda. And from the funding we gave them to set that up a couple of years ago, is really going from strength to strength and become a self-sufficient entity in that respect. Bottom middle is where we've supported volunteer groups. That's the Womburn Best Kept Village group out on Toll House Way, where we've supported that group with our own staff volunteering scheme and had the opportunity to get staff out on site and sort of put that bit back into the community ourselves. It would also be remiss of me not to mention at the Green Flag, we've recently been awarded at Sitch Lane Cemetery, which is a national standard for how we manage open spaces, and a clear commitment from the council in terms of sort of sustainable environmental management of open spaces with an eye on the climate change agenda. And finally, I've got these up onto the same slide, really, but in terms of our procurement, we are trying to understand what we can do to draw climate measures into the procurement process. The obvious things like using local firms, green businesses where possible, and how we can sort of stack that up in the procurement process to ensure these things are brought forward. From a planning strategy point of view, as Annette mentioned, we are ensuring carbon-friendly measures are considered in the new local plan in terms of the development. We're also ensuring that developers deliver 10% biodiversity net gain on new developments, as I'm sure members are aware. We've already put forward several of our own portfolio of open spaces across the district, including the meadows around Purton, Jubilee Wood in Bilbrook, and the undeveloped part of Strawberry Lane Cemetery, to bring that forward as an option for developers to invest in how we can manage those sites. I thought I'd briefly mention out the carbon footprint of the South Staffs Council. As members will be aware, I put this forward every year in terms of our carbon footprint and how we are doing in terms of savings. I think members need to sort of recognise and celebrate what we've done over the years to reduce that. Since we started in 2010, we've reduced our operational carbon footprint by 43%. You'll notice in the last year, it's been very difficult to reduce that further. We've already taken a lot of the big hits out, moving to things like renewable energy deals, investing in the hub to make it more sort of energy efficient in terms of our own operations. In the last year, we have seen a slight decrease in the BIFA mileage. As members will be aware, the BIFA mileage, our waste contracts, is by far the biggest part of our carbon footprint. We estimate that's over 75% of what the council does in terms of carbon, measurable carbon. And it stands to reason, really, if you think the number of sort of vehicles that are driving up and down the district each day emptying bins. We have seen a slight decrease in that mileage in the past year, but that sort of saving was mostly offset by slight increase in our staff mileage. So in all, there's not a lot to report in terms of our carbon footprint this year, but members really do need to be aware it's going to be more and more difficult to reduce this further without sort of big investments or sort of changes in what we do as a council. Last year I did mention to members that we were keen to sort of get some consultancy support really to help with a costed plan for net zero and to understand what that means for the council really. I'll be honest and admit we have had a challenge with procuring this. We spoke to several companies and not really got a proposal on the table that we think would deliver for us. And to be fair, if I'm saying like the biggest part of our carbon footprint is our waste vehicles, I'm a bit reluctant to pay a consultant to come in and tell us that we need to do something about that. So recognising the challenges of our waste contracts and, trying to think about what's the long-term value of some of these costings, we are still keen to do more around our carbon reporting. And we've been looking at sort of software solutions, picked up a company called Zeller, and I should say there are other software companies available offering similar things. And it's trying to understand what we might be able to do to sharpen up some of our data gathering, our reporting and some of our storytelling around climate change. To demonstrate our sort of leadership to sort of members, residents, businesses and parishes on this one. So I'll be bringing business case forward for members to consider in due course, but this is looking at investing in some software that we can sort of start to roll out and offer out to sort of folk like parish councils and groups and start to understand a bit more the carbon that is going out there in the district, what's being done to measure it and get that storytelling together, but also offer sort of opportunities for brokerage to sort of energy deals and things like that, where parish councils can sort of get on board with it and sort of develop a bit more of a climate champion idea across the district. As I say, as officers, we can see a value in this in terms of our work, but I will heavily caveat this, it does need a business case that will be brought forward to members in due course. And finally, I would like to invite members to an event we're holding here at the council, at the community hub next week on the 15th, 16th of October. We're having a mini sort of climate showcase event, and we've been lucky enough to get the Staffordshire County Council's Sustainability Dream House. And there's a little picture of it in the bottom corner. It's an interactive event which will be setting up in the foyer. Residents, businesses, school children, all being well, will be able to come in and have a look around and see sort of quick practical advice on how they can reduce the carbon footprint of their own house and get ideas for what they can sort of take away and do at home. The county council put this up at the county fair last year, early on this year, and it was a great success, a really nice interactive event. So it'd be nice to get it here at the council. We'll be inviting on the day Community Home Solutions to offer warmer homes advice to residents as part of that. And some of my colleagues will be on hand to talk about sort of green business solutions and what we can do for businesses. As I say, in terms of engagement, we're looking to get residents, members, if you can attend, and some local schools in. We'll be, bearing in mind the carbon house needs to be set up, so we'll be looking to open the event at about 11 o'clock till 5 o'clock on the 15th, and then we'll be holding it on the 16th of October during the morning until about sort of, mid-afternoon again for the carbon dream house to be taken back to wherever it lives at night. And that's it in terms of my presentation, really, in terms of sort of the highlights, which I hope members will be as proud of as I am, really. I'm happy to take any questions on some of the detail that we've talked through.
Councillor, questions? Councillor Cope first.
Thank you for that synopsis of what's going on in the district. We haven't made many comments about renewable energy. Now, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of, we're getting a lot of solar farm applications and battery storage. Battery is not renewable energy, but it contributes to the climate emergency, etc. We're told that on every planning application. This is a big contribution. So I think we need to, as
this progresses, and perhaps not at this moment in time, but we ought to shout about our contribution through renewable energy. Whenever we get those applications, stats are offered to us about how much of that renewable energy is going to power so many thousands of houses. Now, I know I saw a report a few years back that we were quite highly rated for our renewable energy off the back of the wind turbines at Robaston. Now we're getting more solar farms and the battery contribution. That's going to go even higher. Now, I think we need to be shouting about our contribution, this council, to the West Midlands, because a lot of this is going to come through ourselves, renewable energy. So I'd like at some point in the future to see an audit trail of how much we are contributing to this renewable energy. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Copeland. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's two elements of here of this. There's very much, that's quite very strategic, isn't it, in terms of what of our overall contribution as a district, in not only in terms of the fact that we create the framework to be able to do that, but also some of that's locational geography advantage as well, isn't it? But yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of the very sort of strategic point. That where we have been able to achieve that. I think there's that in that context, and there's a wider project conversation being had at a county level and probably at a national level as well in terms of energy plans now, in terms of looking for, what will actually the energy production look like in 5, 10, 15 years time, and how do we actually contribute to that? So how much we put into the grid, how much we draw off it. I think there's also another opportunity, we didn't talk about it in great depth this evening, because I know that the West Midlands Interchange are coming to do a presentation next week, I think, at the before planning committee about their plans for WMI, but their plan is to be the most carbon efficient logistics site in Europe, and effectively, using the old term, consume their own smoke through solar panels on their roofs. So again, that's required some conversations with the network supply, obviously, and the district's ability to obviously take off the grid and the capacity of the grid. So I think that's built into that wider conversation about our strategic contribution, both from businesses and things that we've facilitated. So no, absolutely, would absolutely agree with that.
Councillor Brindley, I've got next, then I'll go to Councillor Fisher.
I used to be a Brindley, but now I'm a Brindle. I've got a couple of questions. First one, you just mentioned the one, the All Ashes site, but I just question how many or how much solar panels on the I-54? How many schools, big schools, secondary schools have got panels? And I noticed when I was in Great Yarmouth and up in Inverness recently, some new housing estates, there must be some methodology that they're having solar panels on every house built. So I don't know where we incorporate that into the planning aspect. So every house, new house, has to have solar panels, or if we could do that. So that is the question. Could we?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you. Really good questions. And in terms of our new plan, in terms of our new local plan, that's obviously at Regulation 19 at the moment, the plan looks at energy saving measures, including solar panels, as part of that and as part of mitigation for climate change. So yes, effectively, new development would be requiring that unless they can be demonstrated that it doesn't. It's not just solar panels, it's other environmentally friendly credentials to those properties as well. In terms of I-54 and the solar panels on those sites, on the sites, some of those obviously would be retrofitted there. As a general rule, they would be supported, and we have done some work with businesses, largely though the smaller businesses, with some businesses to make sure that they can capitalise on some of the funding not just through UK Shared, but other funding streams that there are as well in terms of being able to reduce their usage. So I can get a figure for how many solar panels are at I-55. I don't have them at my fingertips, but I know for certain that WMI is looking to effectively put them on across. There's such a lot of roof space on West Midlands Interchange. There will be a phenomenal amount, and again, I'm sure we can get that information in terms of what and the contribution it will make. So the third question is about schools. Yeah, so as part of our discussions, obviously, it was with the county council. We are part of the broader climate change group for the county, and would encourage schools to do that. We would encourage schools to apply for funding and through obviously some of those are counties, some of them are academies, but we have seen some solar panels and other energy saving in schools, and certainly would encourage it.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman. It's going to be in a similar vein in that regarding planning, but I'm interested in biodiversity net gain credits. So as Ryan said, there, it's going to become more and more difficult to sort of lower our carbon footprint. So to get net zero, assuming we're going to be offsetting more, looking more at that. So are we considering ourselves purchasing BNG credits to sort of keep that local, offset in local? The second one is are we reporting or at least capturing the data really through planning on how the BNG is impacting our district since its mandatory introduction? So regarding the on-site improvements and also where credits are being used for off-site improvements, I assume we can capture that data through the BNG calculation with the planning application as a data source for the district. And then my final one really is, as I think I've mentioned before, is I'm interested in the LNRS, the Local Nature Recovery Strategy, which I know county are leading on. But I think we're one of the main leaders on it at the moment. Could a report be provided to us as members or a future meeting to discuss where the county's at with that LNRS, Local Nature Recovery Strategy? Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for that, Chair. Thanks for that, Councillor Fisher. Yeah, in terms of biodiversity net gain, as I understand this, and Annette might jump in here, I say, what we're doing with our own sites at the moment is putting them forward for developers to sort of, buy into really in that respect. So as it's starting to roll in, as development does happen, if they can't leave a site if they're looking to invest that biodiversity net gain elsewhere, we've got a load of ready sites ready to jump on that one. In terms of how it's being monitored, I might ask Annette to quickly sort of mention that. But I'm sure it is.
Yeah, absolutely. As part of the requirements of BNG and as part of the requirements for if we were to do it or we were to get somebody else to do it and deliver it, it comes with a requirement legally to monitor it, which we would be feeding in, which we would feed into if it was ours, but also we'd require other people to feed into as well. So we're early stages really, aren't we, in terms of what's been done and what we can do and what we can anticipate. But yeah, no, it's something that we will be watching with interest, because ultimately we'll also want to show the mitigation and the offset that we've been doing. So yeah, absolutely. And I see that as part of the reporting that we'll be doing in future years as part of the broader climate change strategy.
And to answer your last question on the local nature recovery strategy, as you say, that's being sort of put together at the county level at the moment, but we are feeding into that. Without setting him up for a job, I'm sure my colleague Matt would be happy to come and talk to members about that one as it sort of develops.
You want to come back on that one?
If I can, Chair, but just obviously, I know we're creating our own habitat banks, which is obviously what they use the BNG for, but it was more, are we considering using our own habitat banks for offsetting our own carbon credits as a council? And just on the calculations, I know each applicant does their own, but is capturing that information on a district-wide level is sort of for the high-level reporting that I was interested in. But yeah, regarding our own offsetting, using our own habitat banks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be looking at other things that we can do because as Ryan said, you know, that the ability, you know, we've picked the low hanging fruit, pardon the pun, haven't we, in terms of being able to do what we've done to reduce by 43%. The big bit next is obviously the waste fleet and how that works out. So reducing it to nothing, because we still have got to do our operations, we've still got to send people out and around the district. Mitigating and carbon offsetting is always going to be a key part of that. And that is one way, alongside planting trees, will be a way that we can do that. So the more we can do it, the better. And it's an essential part of the strategy. So yes on both accounts.
Councillor Evans, Christopher Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's good to see that there's a number of schemes in place across the district to improve the carbon emissions and improve climate action. I was particularly pleased to see that Purton is having a biodiversity net gain in Purton Meadows. I just wanted to ask, a lot of the open spaces in Purton have various informal names. So firstly, where exactly is this scheme going to take place? And also, have you got any further details at this stage? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Evans. At the moment, we're just looking at sort of mapping some of these areas out, but some of the ones that are of particular interest to us are, and it probably won't surprise you really, it's the meadow area adjacent to the lower lake opposite the Pear and Partridge. Some of the meadow areas on the walk to the upper lake, and also Penk Meadow, not Penk Meadow, that's all mountains. The other side of the Penk, behind the Pear and Partridge as you lead onto the Wottersley estate. Those are the main areas we're looking at. I should say the sites I've mentioned, Purton, Bilbrook and Strawberry Lane, it's not the end of the story. These are just the ones we're looking at the moment. And we do intend to build on these over the years and sort of pick up more and more of our open spaces. Thank you.
Any further questions? Michelle, John Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to the solar panels, although I'm very much in favour of alternative energy, sometimes it seems a shame that we're taking up agricultural land with them when there is plenty of industrial land roofs. In France this year, they brought in a law that if you create a new car park bigger than 80 vehicles, you have to cover it in solar panels. That seems eminently sensible to me, using ground that is useless otherwise. The cars are parked underneath, and preferable to what we're doing. Is that something we could look at, and maybe if we're expecting energy saving requirements from new applications, suggest that to them and maybe look to that or its feasibility? Or could even go so far as to a feasibility study on our own car park, part of it, to set an example, because I just feel that they're better there than on the land at Batsall or Coven, although that's not a bad thing. Thank you.
That often, I'm sure I might want to add to that. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, from a requiring a developer to do that, if you were looking at a site, obviously that can be a bit of a challenge, obviously, in terms of what would be required under policy. Obviously it's not a legal requirement, as you know. Interesting, I hadn't picked that up in terms of France. I'll have a look at that. But yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing is obviously looking at solar panels at EV charging on our car parks, but that's not to say that actually in the longer term we couldn't look at some broader panels to be able to look at the EV charging as well as part of that. And only just lost my geography, on the car park at the top by the police entrance, obviously we've got that was funded by a government grant that we had. So the solar panels obviously on that carport that feeds the solar feeds the EV. If it doesn't go to the EV, it goes to the battery and goes back into the battery and so forth. And I think we do more of that. That was 2 or 3 years old now. And I know lots of local authorities have kind of followed suit on that. So I think it's something that, as it's now starting to be a bit more tried and tested, then it's something that we could potentially do more of. There's often a challenge from an aesthetic point of view. I don't think they always look the prettiest, so you have to be careful if that's in a town centre, in a village centre, or somewhere in conservation areas or what have you. But there will be locations where it's appropriate, and we could encourage that. I think though, and I think you picked it up, I think the biggest opportunity is on existing industrial estates where they're hidden from sight. And in fairness, on the West Midlands interchange, chances are, unless you're in a helicopter, you're not going to see that they're there. But hopefully, we'll all benefit from the impact that they're making. So yeah.
The new supermarket at Womben, that doesn't include any car park.
Sorry, it does include EV charging points, and it does. I think there are solar panels on the roof. I'll double check that, but I think there are. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Christelle first, and Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chairman. It's fair to say, Ryan, that probably our biggest carbon footprint is diesel fuel as a council. All the street scene vehicles use it, and all the refuse vehicles use it. I'd just like to read something I've just found on the internet, so it might not be the truth. That's the caveat. HVO has many operational and environmental benefits for diesel-powered equipment and engines. However, likening HVO to diesel in terms of cost isn't a realistic comparison. The true unit cost of HVO is higher than regular diesel at around 10 to 15%. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, which is understandably the debating point when considering a new fuel, and rightly so. But when considering diesel's limited future, it's been phased out of regular usage as the world moves from fossil fuels to sustainable alternatives. The real evaluation you need to make is HVO versus electrification, because that's the only real alternative. Now, when we declared a climate emergency, no one said it was going to be free. So the amount of carbon that we would save would be quite incredible. And if the cost is 10 to 15% more for the purchase of the fuel, surely that's a brilliant trade-off. And plus, you can use your existing vehicle fleet, I would have thought. But I'm no expert on that. You wouldn't even need to purchase brand new vehicles, if that's correct. So I'd like to throw that into the pot. Thank you.
If I might. So yeah, you're right about the HVO. It is more expensive, but it's also very, very difficult to get hold of. It's not currently available in any normal areas where you would be able to get diesel, and it's highly sought after by lots of other companies who are already doing it. So it's going to be a challenge for anybody to actually get it, and it will be more expensive. So we are looking into it, and it is something that we're looking at for the future. Similarly with electric vehicles and with hydrogen vehicles now, both of these are going to come at an extremely high cost compared to the ones we've got. So again, it's going to have to be evaluated of what we will be able to do and what we won't be able to do with the fleet. But unfortunately, right at this moment in time, the vehicles that we have got leased, our leases do not allow us to use HVO. So that's something that will be looked at when the leases come up for free and for renewal. But again, getting HVO and where you store it and how you'll actually put it into the vehicles and then getting it in the first place is going to be a bit of a challenge with everybody else who are already after it. But something we are considering and we would like to go for if we can't do the electric or the hydrogen. But just from a similar thing, from a bus, it's about if you have an electric bus, it's about 200 or 300,000. If you had a hydrogen bus, it was 1 million. So, you know, that's per vehicle. This is a huge amount of difference in what we've got. So as technology progresses, hopefully those costs will come down. But yeah, we're always looking to see what we can do to reduce the carbon. And you're quite right, if we could get HVO, that would be acceptable for the future.
Councillor Allen?
Thank you. One of the principal assets we have in this area is our trees. And I'm very much in favour of planting more trees and particularly protecting our green belt in areas where we can do that. And I think when developers are looking at housing, they're very reluctant to cut down woods. I'm just concerned that in looking at trees, we are not thinking about the maintenance of them. And that is something which is concerning to me. I had to ask the tree officer to come and look at our trees recently and on the playing fields in view of the anticipated park run. And the surveying of the trees is something that needs doing regularly. And the health of the trees is quite critical to our environment. I do feel at the moment we're quite stretched in that area in terms of looking at the maintenance of them. I know Mercy and Trust are very good at helping to provide them, but on our playing fields, a number of them have not flourished for various reasons, I think, you know, too dry when they were planted and so forth, and perhaps the wrong varieties in the wrong locations. But we do need expert advice about that, and I do wonder about increasing our tree team so that we are seen to be not only planting the trees, but also taking good care of them for the future, because they will be there when we are long gone. Thank you.
Annette or Ryan?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Allen. In terms of the trees you mentioned, are these the ones that were planted by the Forest of Mercia along the edge of the playing field? Now, I know the Forest of Mercia do have a maintenance schedule sort of built into the trees and some sort of funding for replacements. That's certainly something we can pick up with them. I mean, maybe to give you some reassurance about what we're doing as a council in terms of our tree management, we've employed a tree inspector who's merrily working his way around the district at the moment. Not as quickly as I'd like at some stages, I must say, to build up a database and get an understanding of the assets of our trees. We can even put a financial figure on that, but it's also, you know, ensuring the safe management of them going forward. We set out works and sort of risk management of these trees in accordance with our tree policy, sort of setting out what works we will do and what works, perhaps more importantly, we won't do. In terms of what residents might ask. So we are taking steps to manage our own stock in that respect. But certainly, you know, I can certainly have a conversation with the Forest of Mercia about some of the tree issues you're having with the newer ones that have gone in.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Just to reassure you, Ryan, they have been replanted once already, and just approximately half of them had to be replanted because we have tiered playing fields and the areas of particular drainage were causing problems. What I'm really signalling for you is that other major bodies that own trees, for instance, the Diocese of Ditchfield, which I remember, as you know, there is a very regular tree inspection taking place there. And the tree officer again is called in quite frequently for particular concerns where there are pathways or roadways and there are adjacent trees. And the audit of this area is going to take an enormous amount of time. I don't accept your criticism of the tree officer for that because I'm aware how many new trees we've got in our own village. So just to say to you, I think it is prudent to have people we can call in for advice. They call in for advice about their homes. We're employing a tree team, which I gather 2 tree teams when they're functioning properly, which is doing commercial work as well, which brings in money. And I do feel that we should be supporting this quite heavily. And I do also know that developers are very reluctant to cut down big swathes of trees, and perhaps we should be looking to be more protective about our environment with these. Thank you.
Any comeback of the officers?
No, thank you, Councillor Allen. Yeah, I do stress actually, I don't mean to sort of criticise our tree inspector, especially in terms of his knowledge and his sort of passion of the trees. And again, to sort of reassure you, that's exactly sort of how we manage our tree stock in terms of the health of the tree, but also in terms of the targets and what's around the tree should anything happen to it. So it sort of allows us to prioritise our work in that respect, and sort of set out the work for our tree team. I should also stress really that it is just the one tree team that we operate at the moment. They do both the commercial work across the district, but also pick up the work that in the past we would have had to put out to a contractor. So it's making the council a saving in that respect as well.
Quickly, please.
Yes, just to say to you, it's economically viable for the diocese to employ a full-time tree inspector and to have assistance with that as well. And I do feel that economically we should be looking at this. If trees that we own fall on people's houses, land, or damage other things, then we are liable.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Kingsley.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief. It's also a tree-related question, actually. Starting off the comments Councillor Allen began with, I think I sympathise with those. I once stood up in a parish council meeting and began with the statement, something like a tree isn't just for Christmas, it's for life, because there is the life of the tree to take into consideration and what the implications might be once it gets big. That can always be problematic. But I do always wonder about the opportunities for tree planting, and I know they can be limited. We're limited to often our own estate, or where we can find landowners who are willing to work with us. That can be few and far between. But earlier this summer, I had an interaction with a resident who was desperate to get a dead birch tree chopped down on the verge outside his house. And I said, well, we'll do some digging on that, see if we can get an answer. I was actually amazed. The county council had got the tree cut down within a week. The resident was bowled over. He thought it was absolutely wonderful service. But then came the question, but I did like a tree being there. Could one be put back? And actually, over time, how many trees have we lost on our verges when they have been placed there originally? Is there an opportunity for work to be done with the county council in terms of verge planting and going back to the original intentions of some of our residential roads? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kingsley. Obviously, in terms of sort of trees, cut down on the verges, that is a question for the county highways, really. I'm sure they'll have the records around that. It's not something in terms of the replacement tree planting, it's not something we're directly involved in, but I know around the district, volunteer groups have worked with Forest of Mercia, another plug for them, and the county council to see replacement tree verges on, replacement trees on some verges within the villages. But these are very much sort of volunteer-led initiatives at the moment. Again, it's something we can maybe raise with sort of local volunteer groups that we already have connections with, if it's of interest to members.
Councillor Williams.
If I can just add on to that as well, obviously it's the types of trees for where you're doing it. So obviously when you're looking at larger trees that could affect properties, and they were looking at different styles. So crabapple trees are very good where they have very low root bases that don't cause as much damage to the road, and obviously don't grow as tall, so they don't become as dangerous. Therefore they're more cost effective, and they are quite good at taking the carbon out. And I know that we've been already discussing about looking at different plants that we might be able to use on our land, and may potentially working with the county to be able to do it on verges, so which will be able to actually take more carbon out of the air. But it is a case where I think it's more of a local thing, where if somebody's had a tree cut down and you would like something back with it, especially within a parish, contact the county and see what they would do, because I think from the experiences that I've had, we're having an area planted up by our quarry, by the quarry itself, and they're maintaining it. So again, there are opportunities out there that you can use with the county council, and if you need help with that, please let me know.
Councillor Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I completely agree with Councillor Allen, Councillor Kinsey about the trees. and Councillor Allen's thing about having somebody extra working for us. But don't forget there's also the tree warden network that many councils operate across the country, where you use volunteers to look after local trees. And if there's any problems with them, they report them as soon as they see them. This seems to be an overlooked network in South Staffordshire or Staffordshire as a whole. And speaking to Ryan, I think we've spoken about this before. Is there any thought about pursuing my idea? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burnett. Yes, the Tree Warden Network, as you say, it's a volunteer-led initiative, really. And it is something we would like to support and work with. At the moment, we do have a bit of a capacity issue in terms of sort of setting that up and running it, but it is definitely something we'd like to have a look at once we've got our sort of base survey of our tree stock completed across the district. That's something we'd be able to pick up then, really. I can't be sort of specific around sort of timescales really, because I know in terms of tree surveys, we've got some fairly hefty sites left to do, like Baggeridge and the Railway Walk and things like that, really. So we're trying to move on these as quickly as we can, but it's very difficult to sort of give realistic timescales at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. We've got a busy agenda, so I'm going to go to 8.1 to note that members note the report, progress and achievements made during 23-24 and the possible proposals for 24-25. Everybody in agreement with all those? Thank you, members. I will now go to agenda item 7, which is a report for Corporate Director Lorraine Fox.
Thank you, members. I really won't keep you very long on this one. The work programme is set out in your papers. The amendments really at the top of page 27 in your pack around the amendments for tonight's agenda. As you see, there's a couple of additional items and a couple of moved items. Just really to highlight, members, that there's been quite a lot of discussion around the waste contract and potential impacts around that. Just to highlight, there is a specific overview and scrutiny committee on the 12th of November, just to look at the proposed waste contract key decision. So that'll be an opportunity for members to have further input. I know there's been a number of workshops on that as well. So the recommendation is that members note the updated work programme. Thank you, Chairman.
Any questions? No? Everybody happy with that recommendation? Thank you, members. I will now go to item number 8, the exclusion of press and public, to resolve that the press and public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following items on the grounds that they are likely to involve disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3, part 1 of Schedule 12 of the Local Government Act. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that?
I'll second this.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Number 9, key decisions.